right, can you all hear me okay? Yes, awesome. So this is going to be a little bit different of a talk than I think all the other ones that I've seen so far. We're going to actually have code, and I'm going to write some code just a little bit. We're going to execute things, so come sit closer. Come move closer. I don't know if you'll be able to read it from way in the back there. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So jumpstarting your test automation, Amazon Alexa, iOS, Selenium, oh my, we put as many buzzwords as we could in here so that you would all come see us. So who are we? I know we just got a little introduction. So I'm the Director of Software Engineering at Mobiquity. I've been there about 3.5 years. My background's in software engineering and development. I wrote my first program on a Commodore 64 when I was about 5 or 6, and I think it was just a while loop that printed something mean out about my brother, like your stupid face or something like that. It wasn't tested well. He hit Control-C and it died. And then I got a software testing job in 2005 in blood banking. So it was a healthcare HIPAA compliant, OSHA, everything software. We were using Rational Robot, which I guess dates me a little bit, and it was spectacularly bad, so we made our own test framework, and so I got a little bit into software testing there. And right now at Mobiquity, I work with about 150 developers and testers. Globally, we have about 12 offices overseas and here. And what I do there now is come up with best practices. I help estimate our projects for our customers, help solution them. And right now, I'm also running a DevOps and IAC project for one of our bigger customers. So this is Corey, one of our excellent developers.
Hi, everybody. I know I've talked to some of you already. I got to say it's a really great group of people, so I've really enjoyed talking to a lot of you, and a lot of you have some really great experiences to share, so it's been fun. I've never been to a conference like this, so it's a new experience for me. I've been involved with QA for about 3 years. I've been at Mobiquity for almost a year now, and before that, I've done some work in the IT industry. I did tech support for the local elementary schools in my area, and I also was a teacher for a couple years. So I have kind of a varied background. And right now at Mobiquity, like Elise said, I'm a software developer. I'm also recently formally a lead QA engineer, kind of transitioned there. And I actually devote a lot of time to developing new tools that could push QA forward in our company and also for everybody. And one of the tools we're going to talk about later is one of those open source ones that I've worked on and I would like to share with you guys to hopefully jumpstart your automation efforts.
Awesome. So I was at Quality Jam last year. I spoke on a panel, and I was disappointed to hear about the road I-85 collapse, but I was pleased to see the result, that they've fixed it now. Or something like that. Yeah, glad you guys laughed. All right. It doesn't look like that. All right, so I'm going to just tell you a little bit about Mobiquity and where we come from and what we do. So we're a professional services company. I'll give you the whole spiel where we provide an omni-channel approach for all your digital touch points. And so what that means is we help other companies build, support, design applications all across different domains. And we do things from web apps, mobile apps, and we started out mobile first, so iOS and Android apps specifically. And we've evolved to a lot of IoT and voice. So one of the things we're going to show you today is how we automate voice projects. This is our little sheet. We have about 400 people right now. Some of this is maybe mildly out of date. 200 clients, 50 million users every day. We have one really, really big, widespread application, which you'll see on our little client sheet. It's a little weather box, which might be in Atlanta here. So we have a huge list of clients. We have a lot of big enterprise projects, and everyone is different. So we have best practices that we look at, but we also have to change our tooling, our process, our test strategy for every single one of them. So we get a nice, wide, varied experience here. So I have a question. I'm going to do a lot of show of hands things, so it's a little class participation. Do any of you work at a services company?
Oh, wow.
I saw half a hand.
It's less than I'd expected.
In hand. Cool. So obviously it's very different. So like I said, lots of domains. We know a lot about PCI, HIPAA, COPA, quick service restaurants. Lots of acronyms, lots of acronyms, lots of technologies. And one benefit of a services company like us is people come to us to figure out what to do next. So we don't drag our feet when we're looking at new technologies. We reevaluate tools and change pretty regularly, which also makes it hard to keep standard our processes. But we do get to learn how to test all kinds of new technologies. So that's kind of what we're talking about here today. So it's question time. How many of you are using QTest Manager right now? Okay, so it's a bunch. That's sort of why we're here. Is one of the things that we wanted to show you is how we integrate some of the new testing, new automation stuff that we do into QTest Manager. Let's see my other questions here. How many of you are in progress of automating your smoke or regression test suite? We are too on some of our projects. How do you know what you're automating? How do you know what's been automated? How do you know if you have 50% of your tests automated, are you tracking them separately? Are you tracking them together? Do you care if it was automated or a manual test? We use the Jenkins QTest integration, and it didn't quite fulfill that need. I wanted to be able to see our entire regression suite. I wanted to see if it was green, or if it was red, or if it was blank when something then got tested. And I didn't care how it got tested. So I wanted to be able to take an existing project with a big manual test suite and just start automating stuff in some way. How many of you have written non-record playback tests? A lot of people. And have you guys who had your hands up, did you automate anything with QTest yet? You have your results going into QTest? Have you used the QTest API? Fewer hands? Oh, cool. All right, so why are you guys here? Why are you listening to us talk? So you're converting your existing manual tests into automated tests. That's kind of our whole spiel. Or you just want to see some cool platforms and how we automate it. Because we definitely have taken a slightly different approach to a lot of people. And we change our tooling regularly. So we'll show you some of that new stuff. So the main thing we want to show you is Corey wrote this open source library. It's a Node package. You can go get it from NPM repository, the main repository. It's online. We'll give you a link to it. You could also Google it right now if you wanted to pull out your laptops. It's called QTest Manager.
QTest Manager Node.
Node, sorry, QTest Manager Node. And it basically will take standard output, JUnit, XUnit, whatever, and use QTest API and upload results to wherever you want. It's quite configurable. If you hear us use an acronym that you don't know, raise your hand. I'll explain it. All right, so the agenda for today. We're going to go over what you might want to automate. I think everyone probably has a good idea of this. We'll just kind of run through that quickly. We're going to demo writing iOS functional UI tests with XCUI test. Have any of you guys used XCUI test before? 2 people. 2 people. How about Appium or Calabash? So we kind of switched over from Appium and Calabash to this, and I'll explain why. We're going to do a demo with Amazon Alexa, so you can automate talking to a computer in your house. And then we're going to walk through the QTest, the code that uploads our results to QTest. All right, so we'll start with what we're going to automate. So how do you decide what to automate? I'm sorry, I don't have flashy slides. I'm not very good at that. But basically, I'm going to ask you for other ideas outside of what I have here, so feel free to start coming up with them. But obviously, anything high risk. So what does that mean? What is a high-risk problem you encounter? Just yell at me. High-risk problems. What might you want to automate? Prior to the business. Go on. What was that? Core functions, sure.
And a high failure rate.
High failure rate, sure. Yep. So other things I think about very specifically are could kill someone. We have some FDA-approved apps. They might deliver medicine or say that you took a medicine. Someone might get hurt. We lose money. Those are obviously some big ones. Lots of integration points. If you have something that is going to hit 50 areas, it's hard to test, so you want to automate that. If there's lots of content or permutations, so a good example for that is the Alexa test. That's not really high risk. You're not going to do anything really high risk in your kitchen talking to your Amazon Echo, but maybe there's 500 things you might want to say to it. We had an example of a project that we did for a customer where we were saying different dog breeds. There's a lot of dog breeds, and nobody wants to sit there for hours just asking a question about every single dog breed to make sure you get the right answer. Tests that need to be repeated frequently if you have a CD kind of situation. Obviously, that's a good one. Any other ideas? Why would you want to automate something? New content. Yeah, there's all kinds of reasons. This is just kind of what we go off of and then prioritize it, of course. So I'm going to get to the demo part, so that I'm going to be, at the computer here, so I apologize. If you can't see anything, let me know. I can make it bigger. So does anyone not know what XUI test is? Okay, so it's a built-in functional UI test framework into Xcode. So it's provided by Apple. So every time Apple releases a new operating system, an update to Xcode, this comes with it. So it's always up to date. We loved Appium. We've used Appium on lots of projects. We made a nice Appium framework that we used to use with Ruby. And then iOS 10 came out and everything died. Nothing worked anymore. And so we decided to go with the native test platforms. So XUI test for iOS, Espresso for Android. It's kind of the analog. All right. The other big thing about XUI tests is it's committed with the code. It has to be committed with the code because it's actually part of the Xcode project. So what I'm going to go over, you already have an existing regression suite. We're going to automate some of it. I'll show you an example. And the whole process of what I'm about to show you is we're basically going to write a test. We're going to execute the test with Xcode, and we're using a Ruby gem, so it's just a little program that you install on your computer called XCPretty because Apple makes the worst output for their console that is unusable and non-standard. So XCPretty is this Ruby program that cleans it up and will turn our test cases into JUnit results. And then we're going to use his library that Corey made to upload the results to QTest. So it's pretty quick. Please ask questions. Can you see anything come up? If you can't see, feel free to sneak on up. All right. Because I'm not mirroring my display, I'll kind of look over here. So I built this really awesome app that you're about to see tested. Let's see if I can open it. Or it's going to crash. I didn't test it. There it is. This is the app I built for you all today. I don't know if you can read it. That says yellow. It says yellow was pressed, cyan, magenta. Kind of a straightforward app, even though that looks purple. This is Xcode on the right here. I made this font really big, so I think you can see it, but this is an XUI test. It's super small, and this is from scratch. I'm not using any kind of libraries. And as you can see, it asserts that when I press the magenta button, it says magenta was pressed. So I'm going to execute this. This is where we needed Ryan for some color commentary. This takes a second. So it builds it, and then it's going to... This application is for just for you. It's for free. Now, this is on, if you look up Mobiquity's GitHub account, I made this public yesterday if you really wanted to see my awesome source code.
We're going to call it I Am Rich and sell it for $9.99.99.
So this is like the default way you run a test in Xcode. This is cool. Your developers could write this. Your testers could write this. It's pretty straightforward. This is the console output. It's awful. And let me show you. See, I don't have it up on the screen there. Okay. You might be familiar with this software. So this is my test execution area. What I have here are some tests that obviously are super important to me, and I want to run every day. I just did the magenta text test. And so what I'm going to do, I'm a little old school about things. So I have a command line here, not to scare anyone off. So basically I'm going to run that test, possibly if I can find it in my history. So this just runs it from the command line. You'll see right here is a little pipe which puts the output from that ugly console in the bottom right behind there into this XPretty Ruby gem, and it creates a JUnit report. So I'm going to run it again. It's basically going to do exactly what it just did, but it gives me this nice, pretty output. So then the outcome of this is I get a JUnit file. test, and it passed. Success. And if you really want to see what that file looks like, it's what you might expect from a JUnit test. And then the magic library, I'll show it to you. Looks like this. This is the code, and that is it. So this uses the library that Corey made up at the top here.
I'll explain it, don't worry.
Yeah, we'll go through this in a minute. It's not as scary as it looks. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. And if you remember, in here, no tests have been run, but we just ran one. Now I want to upload the results, which of course I could run all of this through Jenkins. I'm just doing it manually, piece by piece to show you. That's the output that I expected. I won't go through that right now. If I go back, if I can find my window. See that green dot? Not only that, what I did is I passed in iOS results 2.0 tests as the cycle. And then any test with that test case ID that I provided to it, which I'll show you where I did in a second, will get executed. You excited? Yeah, all right. I'm excited. All right, so I'm gonna basically do this one more time. So open up Xcode. I'm gonna make another test. I'm gonna copy and paste that one. You'll see this number here. So let's test cyan, because that's a pretty color. This is the test case ID. And I'm gonna go get that from QTest here. So I wanna see the test case ID for cyan. You can go click on test design. Ryan or QASymphony, if there's another way to get this.
Yes, feature
Click
request.
there. There's an ID in the URL here. I'm gonna copy that and paste it right there. Do cyan. Do cyan was pressed. I'm gonna execute it from the command line.
I hear some QAs in the audience.
I know. I'm choosing to ignore them. Everything was perfect. I'm a really bad developer. So this takes a minute. So this is running in the simulator behind the scenes right now. Unless yeah, okay. Oh my gosh, there's a failure. But because I have this set up through CI, or normally would, I'll go ahead and upload the results. Look in my test execution. Oh my gosh, it failed. So this is the general gist of everything I wanted to show you guys. So I could go in and fix it and run it again, and it would turn green right away. And you'll see since magenta ran twice, it'll have both executions and times. So another feature request that we have put in so gently several times in the last couple days is how do I know if this test was uploaded through automation, through the API? And right now, I think the only way you know is through that little gear icon that shows up. If I were to just manually go execute it, that wouldn't show up. We've also started updating the library so that it puts a comment in saying what executed it. So, yeah.
I can speak on
Yep,
that. Yeah.
go ahead.
So the question was do we actually map the failed steps to the steps in the test cases? Showing the what? I'm sorry.
You can show the failed steps in QTest.
Right. So currently with the uploader, when you're uploading XML results, that's not a feature that's included because the steps that show up in the XML reports don't match that. They don't have enough data to do that. So you would actually have to manipulate the data in the XML in order to do that. However, if you take a more customized approach to using the node package, you can actually configure it to upload individual test cases however you want. You can choose to upload the test cases in the way you want. You can choose to add screenshots, pass and fail each step. You have almost complete control over what you want to do with it, just like you would inside the QTest GUI. So with the XML, it's a little challenging, but if you take a full customized approach, you can do it, yeah.
And as a reminder, it's open source, the node package, so
Yep.
feel free to add that feature to it.
Send me all the hate mail you want.
So one other thing to note, this test failed. So this is the JUnit test result. So if I were running this from Jenkins, I would probably keep this as an artifact so I could go look at it later if I wanted to see exactly the details of the failed test. All right. So I think we're going to go over this code here real quick. So that's the entire file that uploads all the test results using his library. So he's going to go over that real quick.
Okay.
Not real quick, slowly, whatever you want to do.
It's going to be hard to kind of point to it, but let me know if you guys need trouble or have any trouble seeing anything. So just at a general level, so there's kind of a couple pieces. So the QTest Manager Node package, and this is JavaScript, this is Node. If you haven't seen it before, it can look kind of intimidating, but most of this is comments, and a lot of it I've actually expanded. It's a bit more verbose than you would actually have to write it. I just did it that way for clarity of what each step was doing. So we're grabbing the package, so I've already installed the QTest Manager Node package, and then I'm grabbing the piece of that that's called the file uploader. So that's the only component you need to actually upload your XML results. That's the one piece. There's lots of other things you can do with the package, but if you just want to upload your JUnit XML, that's the one you need. The next few lines, 2, 3, 4, all those are doing is grabbing the file. So there's the built-in package or the built-in library for reading a file with Node. So it's reading in the JUnit results that Elise produced with her test, and then it's taking that and saving it. And then we have another part where we're parsing our secret password file text. So that's actually our credentials for QTest. So you never want to store your credentials inside the file. You're going to want to keep them separate. So we have them in a separate file. We import that file, and then we refer to it. So our uploader, now we have to declare an uploader. So I say, I want to make a new QTM, QTest Manager file uploader. I provide our host name. So ours happens to be mobiquity.qtestnet.com. And then we pass in that secret token that we got out of our file up here. So in that file, what we're actually doing, Elise has it kind of short-circuited, but what you can do is set it up. If you have it integrated with Jenkins or something, you can have your code actually log in. You grab your username, password for QTest, log in, it'll return that token, and then you can use that token in this request. All right, is anybody lost so far? All right, good. That's awesome. That's more than my first time looking at it. So the next part, so on line 10 there, what we're actually doing is we have the ability to affect the test name regular expression. So how many of you are familiar with regular expressions? All right, good. They are probably it's one of those, the worst tool, but the only tool for the job for a lot of cases like this. But what that does is that allows you to parse out the ID of your test case from whatever tool you're running. So in the XML, it's going to have a test case name. Whatever test you run puts that name in the XML, and what you do is include the ID of the test case you want to execute in QTest in that name. So that regex, what that will actually do for you is allow you to define where that is. By default, it looks for a hashtag and then the number or the ID of the test, but you can manipulate that so you can use whatever format you want so you don't have to subscribe to one particular test naming convention. There's a couple other things that are configured. So there's the 13, 19, and 22. We have a project ID, a module type, and a module ID. So module type should look familiar. Every time you create a test execution in QTest or a test module, it's going to have a type. So you have test cycles, you have suites, you have just plain modules, and that's the type that's going to be there. So if I choose test cycle and I give it a module ID of whatever ID of that test cycle is, it's going to go into the test, what's the name of the?
Test suite, test cycle, test module, test
Sure.
plan.
I can't remember the exact name of the test, the test declaration tab, whatever it's called.
Design.
Thank you, test design. So you're going to put the ID of the test cycle in that test design tab, and what it's going to do is when you run your test, it's going to look for all of the test runs that match the test cases that are there. So if you have, say, test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it's going to look for test runs that map back to that test case ID. So what all that means is that it allows you to, instead of when you run your automation, instead of creating new instances of test runs, it's going to refer to the ones you already have. So it allows you to I'll go ahead and automate your existing regression suite without having to create new runs and just base your tests off of those.
So
Hey, Corey, I have a question for you from the audience.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt you. We'd worked on a similar node package. So my question is, how are you guys hard-coding the module IDs, project IDs there? You internally have to look up the IDs, right? The APIs don't provide you to look up things on the UI and just provide that. Instead, you'll have to get the JSON response and then pass through for the internal ID, right? Wasn't that a problem for you?
No, so I did this earlier to get the test case ID.
Yeah.
So we were only updating this, say, once every release, or maybe once a sprint where I'd want to have my top level directory change. And then the test case ID is, I'm expecting that somebody already manually wrote the test case. And then I go into QTest and I get the ID from the URL.
Okay. Well, what we did was we always, if you wanted to do it dynamically, you just get the response, parse through it, map whatever name you see on the UI, get the attached ID for that, and then that way you update it. So we had put in a request for this because all those APIs only support for the internal IDs and not the UID you see on the UI. So yeah, I was just wondering how you guys
Yeah. So I think our first approach was to look at the name of the test case. And this made it a little bit more flexible because I know that that test case in the code is always tied to that thing. If I have 50 people working on it, I don't want them naming something the same thing by accident.
But yeah, it's a lot of search, I guess. If you were to do it always, it would just increase your updation time, I guess.
So in this particular case, it was kind of tied to our particular needs. So for the projects that we were using it on, the main need was to be able to configure a very complex test design tab. So we have, the way that we were organizing our test cases, we had very, very deeply nested test case modules. And so the easiest way to handle that was to set up a config file where we could just change the module IDs real quick when we want to set up a new release run and then run that versus going off of some other kind of indicator. So just based off, there's tons of ways you can do it, and the package actually allows you to handle this in different ways. So that uploader.project ID, you could use that and put that in any other custom solution you wanted to. So you could actually make that a variable and pass it in through some other method, and you could use it that way.
All right, we're going to move on to the Alexa, unless there's any other questions about this guy here.
I think we're good there. Okay. So a few questions about Alexa. Who's interested in learning more about Alexa? So that's the Amazon Echo, Dot, et cetera suite. And hands high, and keep them up for a second. Okay, all right, so keep your hand up if you're one of those people. And who actually, of those people, has an Amazon Alexa product? Okay, good. Same people who are interested. That makes sense. And now, how many of you have actually tested an Alexa app or a skill? Wow, almost nobody. Oh, we got some.
We tested at home.
Okay.
Don't we all?
So this is something that we've actually encountered recently is we've had a few projects that are Amazon Alexa skills, and that's kind of the same thing we encounter is that a lot of people haven't tested it before, and it's a new technology, it's a new area. So a lot of what we were doing was kind of breaking new ground and finding new ways to do things.
And this is a mild, shameless plug. Mobiquity is an Amazon Premier partner, so we do a lot of things in AWS and Amazon, and we're the #1 Alexa skills writer. Mobiquity.
Go us.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to kind of give a brief explanation of Alexa and how it works. So you have a device, and that device is either an Echo or a Dot or some other third-party device that has the software installed on it. Alexa is the actual service. So when you say something, your speech is called an utterance, and that utterance goes to the Alexa service. And that Alexa service then takes that and it turns it into a request. So it takes whatever you say, and turns it into a little JSON packet that has information like what I think you were trying to say, and other information like any kind of account information that you might have in there, and any other information in the request that you might need. And it takes that information and that sends it to your code or your function. So the way Alexa works is that you have this one function that handles basically everything. Now within that, you can split it up and modularize it however you like, but that one function handles anything that's sent to Alexa. So Alexa gets that, sends it to your function processes it, and says, I'm going to do something with this result, and then it sends that back to Alexa, and then that's when Alexa says something witty back to you. So there's some challenges with this. So like I said, it's new. There's not a real native solution for automated testing with Alexa. And also, like Elise mentioned earlier, with the dog breeds, we often encounter situations where we're testing large amounts of utterances. And that's one of the things that we're having that's hard to explain to clients, is that they want every single little utterance tested, and that's difficult to do, because if you have a manual tester and you have 1 million utterances that you want to test, that's a lot of work. Even if you have 100 testers, you'd be sitting there for years. And so those are some of the challenges we had to face. So what are our options for handling those challenges? So the first one is local unit tests. Not really QA's purview, but it's definitely something that needs to be done, and you unit test the code. Little individual pieces of code still need to be tested. Now, testing functionally, you can do local functional tests with Alexa. So like I said, the whole Alexa skill that you create is just one function. And so if you want to test it, all you have to do is send it data and test that the response you get back is correct. So you can do all that locally on your machine. The problem is that you need a tool to generate that request. It's a pretty complicated request object that has a lot of different properties on it, and you have to figure out some way to create that. Now, when you speak to Alexa, she generates that for you. So you don't really need that there, but to test it locally, it becomes more challenging. So the second piece you can do is deployed functional tests. So instead of just testing the function locally on your machine, what you can do is actually test your deployed code. And it's almost the same problems, but what it does is it gives you a closer to prod-like environment, because at least you're testing some code that's deployed somewhere and not just on someone's local machine. And it's also a little bit easier to set up. You don't have to have the function running on your local machine. You don't have to set anything up that is waiting and listening for that request. So it takes out one level of complexity. And then there's this bottom option here where we do Amazon Dev Console automation. Now, in my opinion, it's great, but it's also kind of clunky. So it works well, but we're automating a browser to test an Amazon skill. So taking that kind of clunkiness aside, it's actually one of the easiest options you can do to test your Alexa skill. So you don't need any tool to generate the request, because when you go to the Amazon Dev Console, what it does is you provide just some text, and that text will generate that request for you. And then it's closest to prod as it's going to get, because it's actually already deployed on Amazon servers. So you can't get much closer to prod than being deployed on the servers that you're actually going to deploy on. And it's also the easiest to set up. You don't have to generate your own requests. You don't have to worry about running your own code. And there's not a lot of overhead involved in creating that setup. So this bottom option is what we actually made a tool to do. So we have this console automation tool called Pigwidgeon. If you want the details about the name, you can ask me later. So what is it? It's a tool that we developed that simplifies the testing of Alexa skills. And it does pretty much what I described, where we go into the dev console and we automate it using Selenium, and Selenium goes through and enters all the data for us and tests out the skill. So using it, all we need to do is install the tool, and the only things you need to run it are your Amazon developer credentials and a test file. So what we found on our projects is that pretty much everybody involved in the project that's either developing or testing ends up with a set of Amazon developer credentials. And that's what you're going to use to log in, look at the skill, mess with the skill, test it, all that jazz. And then this test file is a format that I created that will allow you to declare how you want to test that particular skill. So I have a video, and shameless plug, that's my wife and daughter. And I'm super excited. I'm leaving tonight, going back home. Been away for 3 days. She's only 8 months old, so I'm missing her. But this is fun too. How do I just play? Okay. So what this is going to show you is a quick running. It's going to be kind of hard to see. Good. But what it's doing is it's launching one of these test files, logging into the Amazon console, and it's going to go and it's going to test a bunch of utterances. So on the bottom left corner of the screen, in a second, you're going to see a list of text that's just streaming in and being tested. So help, give me a catchphrase. I would like a catchphrase, help. All of that information just launched up the browser, streamed in, tested that the response that came back from the console was accurate, and then closed out. And you can see on the right, those are the results. So we have 4 specs, there were 0 failures, and it finished in X number of seconds. And for those of you who have automated with JavaScript before, you might recognize this is actually built on top of Jasmine. So it's using Jasmine in the background, so you can build in any kind of Jasmine reporters to get all of the reports that you might like.
Don't worry, we're not going to go through this one in detail.
Yeah, we'll get
It's
a few
tiny
minutes.
font.
So what this is, any questions so far, by the way? Let's see any hands. Okay. So this is a sample test file. It looks kind of complicated, but just breaking it up just a little bit, it's basically an array of steps. So these are each of the steps that you go through when you're testing the skill. And then you have the utterances or speech that you say, and then the expected object there, the little property expected, will test the response. So you put in the response you're expecting, and then that's what it'll check for when you put in the phrase into the Amazon Dev Console. And that's all you need. You need the tool installed, you need your credentials, and a file that looks somewhat like this. It can actually be a lot smaller than this. And that's all you need to test an Alexa skill using this tool. All right, I don't know if we have a lot of time.
Yeah, so I think we're pretty low on time here. So we have some links. We'll put this up wherever you put up all the decks with links to all the code, so you can try it out if you're so inclined. It's all online, other than the Pigwidgeon one. That one's proprietary at the moment, but maybe we'll open it up. That's the gist of what we have. So thank you.
Thank you, Elise. Thank you, Corey. We have time for some questions here. As Ben Affleck said in Good Will Hunting, these guys are wicked smart, right? Corey is a very smart guy. Elise, you're smart too. And I just want to make everybody's smart here.
It's fine.
I didn't mean that in a... Anyway, all right. Elise and I know each other. We're good friends. Okay, so we have a question around, and this is actually, I can actually answer this question, but from a product standpoint, but the question asks, can the plugin auto-create a test case when it doesn't exist, similar to our out-of-the-box Jenkins plugin that we already provide? So you all are not using that plugin right now, right? You're using this whole thing. So,
Actually, well, we use both.
Okay, you
we're
use
on
both,
different projects. Depends on the project.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I think the answer is the answer yes, that it does that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so go ahead.
So both the QTest API by default and the QTest Manager node package will both allow you to do that. So the package is basically just layered right on top of the API. It's just basically some convenience methods that allow you to do it in a bit more of a simple way than having to write HTTP calls every single time you want to make a request to the API. But yes, you can do that.
So I'd like to speak to why we did it this way, because we do use the Jenkins plugin, and my favorite way to use that is with API automation, because those tests are somewhat self-explanatory. Here's your request, here's your response. I don't need to explain why I'm testing that necessarily, whereas all the functional tests I want to categorize into feature area, functional tests, high-risk tests. I can categorize them in a lot of different ways, and I want someone to really think about those and design the test cases first. With the API test, I just want every endpoint tested with as many permutations as I can think of.
There's another question that said, how do you provide coverage to tests that cannot be automated, but also you want to avoid the redundancy of manual regression? It's kind of a catch-22.
Manually regression test them.
You see.
We still manually test them, yeah.
Okay.
So some things are hard,
Right. Does anybody else know the answer to that? If you can't automate something, you don't want to manually do it, do you have another suggestion? Just don't test it, right? You just not test it.
Who
You
cares?
got two. Another question came in here around, so you use Node, right? Why? Give me a reason why. Or give me the alternates to I guess, of not using Node, I guess.
So the real answer is I made this and I wanted to learn Node. So that's kind of the story behind that. But it's also, a lot of our projects in the company are based off of JavaScript. So I thought it would be a familiar language that's both easy for our QAs to enter into and also easy for our existing developers to pick up and start using right away.
JavaScript's the most popular language in the world. Who wouldn't want JavaScript? No, so when I think of something that's just making a lot of API calls, my default is JavaScript. If it's RESTful, you're passing in JSON objects and getting them back. It's really easy to parse.
All right, any other questions for the team up here? Do we have time for one question? Saw a hand go up over here? Okay. I'm running. Hold on.
Faster, faster.
I used to play college soccer. I do not do that anymore. Oh, yeah.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
As part of ADA compliance, I'm testing screen reader functionality, and I'm trying to do automation with it. So I just imported like a Java package into my Selenium script and trying to do that, but is there a better way to do this? So I
you're
use
testing a
ChromeVox.
screen reader.
So ChromeVox is a added thing you can add like a plugin in your browser. And then if you go to CNN.com, you see breaking news. So for a person who's blind, who cannot see the computer, the ChromeVox will read line by line each and everything which is on the UI. So I'm trying to automate that. I don't know if you came across this scenario or if anyone has some cool ideas how to do this in a better way. Because just using the package in Selenium, which is built by somebody, it's not really working out great for me. So I don't know if someone came across this or just showed this question. So probably you thought,
I mean, I guess that's kind of a tricky question because there's so many ways that screen readers, I know there's special screen reader tags that exist in the HTML. So the simplest solution I could think of would be to grab that HTML and look for the exact things you're looking for. Now the caveat with that, kind of like with Alexa testing in the dev console, is that you're not actually hearing it or saying it as you would with Alexa. So it's kind of hard to hear that information. And some things are just great candidates for manual testing. That might be one of them. But if you just want to test that the raw information is there, then grabbing the whole HTML body out of the page and then just testing the individual elements for what you're looking for could be a solution.
And if you wanted to go way over the top, maybe you could have your test say the word Alexa first, and you write a skill, you pass in all the voice, and this is probably
Thank you.
not the right solution.
thanks.
All right, let's give it up for Elise and Corey.